Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb. For those who don't know me, back in the 1990s, I was the most junior commissioned officer ever in history of the United States Army to serve in the position of Operations Officer for All Strategic Counterintelligence in the continental United States, or CONUS is the acronym. If you have been following the news regarding the intelligence activities related to a novel coronavirus, you will know that in April 2020, George Stephanopoulos and ABC News disclosed that electronic surveillance had uncovered and reported to the former President, Donald K. Trump, indicia of an emergent public health threat in Hubei province that might potentially present a threat to U.S. forces in the Sino-Pacific theater. It is not normal to state in the news that we are conducting electronic surveillance against any country, but this is what George Stephanopoulos and ABC News did and attempted to corner the former Secretary of Defense using this information. As a key staff officer serving as the aide-de-camp for the commander of the counterintelligence activity at the time, I played a critical role in the formation of the precursor to that agency, now known as the INMIC, or National Medical Intelligence Center, and consequently have a unique perspective on a public health threat that has tangibly altered any conception of the American way of life. And the conclusion of our extensive investigation and analysis, prompted in part by litigation, which we shall present in this pandemic hogwash, is that a pandemic crisis could have and should have been avoided on day one, particularly in our science community. And that misaligned incentives resulted in the presentation of a national and world crisis that has become our new normal. I took an oath many, many years ago to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States and the American way of life. This briefing is based upon evidence readily available in the open source environment and is unclassified. The second topic of discussion in this unclassified informational briefing is a succinct history of virology and epidemiology. All virologists and epidemiologists are fully aware that viruses are the most abundant biological particles in the world, which by function of the law of large numbers, for those who took statistics or calculus or any kind of high school math, creates the highest potential for the emergence of a biological threat to mankind. However, all virologists and epidemiologists, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, who the current President Joe Biden has described as the most trusted voice in the world, and who is often described in the press as the nation's leading disease control expert, which is not and has not ever been his job, serving as the director for the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, acronym NIAID, know or should know that before the emergence of a pneumonia of unknown etiology in the central mainland of China, there were only a total of 220 known to pose even the slightest threat to mankind. Accordingly, the emergence of any public health threat from this pathogen community should have served as a red flag that forces other than nature were involved. But yet, all 6 declarations for public health emergencies of international concern to date, or PHEICs, by the World Health Organization have involved, ironically, viruses, and often re-emergent viruses like polio, which had been eliminated in the United States as a threat in the early part of the 20th century. A truly remarkable achievement for science at that time, since viruses were only discovered towards the very end of the 19th century in independent discoveries among plants and animals in 1892 and 1896. All of this information, too, is readily available in the open source environment, and if you have neglected your duty during a pandemic crisis that has claimed the lives of over 500,000 Americans, that is between you and your God. The third topic in this unclassified informational brief is the history of coronaviruses, of which a novel coronavirus may be the first coronavirus about which you, as a self-proclaimed scientist now, were more likely than not wholly unaware. Coronaviruses, a subclassification of viruses, were first discovered in animals during the 1930s and in humans in the 1960s, independently by the University of Chicago Medical School during research studies involving medical students to uncover the causes for the common cold, as well as in the United Kingdom, where the first picture of a human coronavirus was captured by an electron microscope. Also, during attempts in the scientific community to uncover the causes and nature of the common cold, which, as it may come as a surprise today, scientists had no comprehension of the commonplace phenomenon, even as a space race between the superpowers was paving the way toward the first landing of an astronaut on the surface of the moon, with one small step for a man and one giant step for mankind. What was discovered in those early research projects was that although coronaviruses in humans give rise to respiratory tract infection signs and symptoms which are distinct, they constituted but a small part, as much as 30% of the cocktail mixture of what we commonly describe as the common cold, were most akin to chicken coronaviruses and did not of themselves appear to present any exclusive threat potential for infection, lacking a sufficient capability to become a rampant and dominant infectious or communicable disease, but rather only a co-infecting agent. Nonetheless, the discovery of human coronaviruses might and has been described in some press reports as a progressive achievement because both lead scientists in these independent discoveries in the United Kingdom and the United States were research teams involving a man and a woman as the principals, who one might poetically say gave birth at least to our present awareness of human coronaviruses, for which most Americans would have found a novel single strand of ribonucleic acid just 1 year ago. Like Monty Hall, an overnight success story that only took 50 years. And it is at least of probative value that coronavirus did not arise in the open source as a potential threat to mankind until the emergence of the severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, or SARS, in Hong Kong, a contentious area in Asia in 2003. Later followed by the Middle East respiratory syndrome virus, or MERS, another contentious area, all of which found primarily outbreaks within nosocomial settings or hospital settings, with little evidence of spread in the broader community, an anomalous finding or characteristic for a pathogen described as a highly contagious disease, especially with a pathogen like SARS that had a 35% case fatality rate. All of this information is readily available in the open source environment. And again, if you have neglected in your duty during a pandemic crisis that has claimed the lives of over 500,000 Americans, over 10,000 Virginians, that is between you and your God. And so here is the truth. My name is Major Mike Webb. And by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Virginian and every American true to, like the motto of the infantry, follow me, and we shall overcome. Honest. And y'all go back now. Hip. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
And y'all come back now. Here.